Hello again. I wanted to talk about Spider-Girl yet again. I think there's going to be a lot of Spider-Girl discussion happening on this channel because I like it so much so far. My daughter and I read a little bit more of the second volume last night. Probably got into like issue 7 or 8. It was funny. I couldn't tell if it was a bonus issue because I'm reading it digitally, or what happened. But I felt like I read through a single issue in like 3 minutes. And usually a comic takes me like 20 minutes to get through. I hear people talk about how they just rip through them, but for me it usually takes a lot longer. But for some reason this just zoomed by, and it wasn't because there wasn't a lot of content. I mean, Mary Jane was basically telling May the history of Spider-Man in short form. Again, and it's expanded more than in, I think, issue 1 when Normie shows up and goes after Peter. But, whoa. Oh, okay, sorry. Almost crashed, but I'm okay. Anyway, so she's telling her, and she's talking like the whole time, telling the story, but it's done in a really interesting way. I thought it was very satisfying. I wasn't bored by it at all. I was actually really engaged by it, and my wife even overheard me and said, "Hey, who's talking in that book?" And I said, "Oh, it's MJ. She's, talking about Peter's career and why they quit and whatever." And she was off, like, just passing by and heard it, and she seemed interested, so that's pretty good. She enjoys the Spider-Man movies with us, but I'm not sure she'd be caught dead reading a comic book. So I think the fact that it was compelling enough just hearing me read it aloud, although I gotta admit, when it comes to Spider-Man, for some reason I get really emotional, and maybe too because like there's a father-daughter dynamic there between Peter and May that weighs pretty heavily on Peter and informs his decisions. And I'm reading to my daughter. I don't know what it is, but whatever. Really engaging stuff. However, I'm not here to review Spider-Girl Volume 2, although that will come at some point in the future. What I wanted to talk about is the MCU and Spider-Girl in the MCU. And, well, another element to add in here is I just watched the official Thor trailer. I guess it came out of or after San Diego Comic-Con, and I gotta say, after I saw the first Thor trailer, I thought, this looks interesting. I might want to go see this in the theater. I rarely get to the theater, and I thought, maybe I'll make an exception for this and push really hard. I really like Chris Hemsworth as Thor. I really enjoyed the first Thor movie. The second one was okay, although I did enjoy his interactions with Loki. Now, so many people like Loki, so, what am I saying? It's nothing new, but I enjoyed their dynamic. Actually, it was funny. I went to go see that with my brother, and we were actually both pretty shocked when Loki... Well, anyway, when the things that happened in that movie happened. Thor Ragnarok 2. The second trailer, the official trailer, I think it's thoroughly uncompelling, whereas the first one had me excited for the movie and thinking I'd go see it in theater. Now I don't really want to. Although I think maybe I am not affected properly by modern trailers. I think perhaps they're marketing to different people, and I'm not in that demo that they're trying to hit. So I've seen multiple modern trailers that I found wholly uncompelling. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. But it got me thinking that they're kind of staging things in such a way that Thor is changing. He's really having a character arc over the movies. He started out one way, and in Ragnarok, apparently he's kind of had a fall from grace. And even Loki, who just wanted to take the crown or whatever and rule Asgard, he's like teaming up with him, and there's a lot of change happening. And I think change is important, and change is vital. It's kind of from the X-Files. I remember hearing this as a kid, and it's always stuck with me that a shark dies if it doesn't keep moving. And apparently that's not true. Not all sharks die if they don't move. There are some species who are affected that way, and I think it has something to do with their motion is what gets the water to run through their gills. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. So my point is, change is vital to, well, vitality, to life. if there's no movement, if there's nothing happening within an entity, it'll stagnate and die, go into septic shock, and poison itself, and it'll no longer be able to live. And I'm not going to critique and say that's what I think is happening with the Marvel movies, because there is change happening, and I'm happy to see that. But I think a greater change, who knows how much longer they'll be making Marvel movies. I think the Star Wars movies are slated to be coming out for at least the next 6 years. I don't know, there's going to be like 10 movies or something besides Force Awakens. And I guess we're at Force Awakens, Rogue One, the Han Solo movie, and then Episode 8, Last Jedi. So there's going to be at least 6 more movies after that. And I think the only way that a company can manage having that many movies out all in the same universe is to make sure they explore different areas of that universe. And that's what they're doing, and that's what they've done with the Marvel movies. I just watched Doctor Strange. I really enjoyed that. Again, I didn't go to the theater for it. I saw it on Netflix. And I thought it was a really interesting movie. Lots of fun. It definitely opens up a new world for the Marvel movies to explore. This interdimensional type thing with space. And I know, Thor is sort of interdimensional, or maybe at least traveling on wormholes over the Rainbow Bridge or whatever, but like, it's definitely a different feel to me than what Doctor Strange expressed. Like, Doctor Strange is more concentrated in the ethereal than Thor is. In Thor, it's kind of like that's the set dressing, or the mechanical aspect that gets the action done, whereas in Doctor Strange, like, everything is slowed down and you really get to focus in on these, items with magic in them and things like that. So, anyway, I'm moving towards Spider-Girl in the MCU. I think change is what they will need to put into every movie. They're going to need to push the envelope, and not only are they going to need to change what's happening and the circumstances, but I think they're also going to need to really let it feel like time has passed. One great thing Spider-Man Homecoming did was it made it so that Toomes, the Vulture, was operating his little criminal empire in a world affected by the events of the Avengers movie. And I think they say 8 years has passed since then. And they definitely show the passage of time in Spider-Man Homecoming. I think the movie itself takes place, it starts 6 months after the whole thing with Captain America, the Civil War, Captain America 3 Civil War, and there is like a 6 month period of time, maybe, that the movie actually covers once you get back to Peter, being just the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Anyway, so the passage of time is important, and I think having connections established and having like a generation of heroes here, and having things change that shift the standing or the status quo are important. And I feel like what I've heard with the whole Infinity Gem, Infinity Glove, Thanos guy, like, there's going to be this huge cosmic event in, Avengers 3 probably? And that's going to really change things. And I think Thor Ragnarok looks like it's pushing us in the direction where we're going to get a lot of change in the MCU. And I think that's very healthy. I need to consolidate and narrow it down back into my focus. I think Spider-Girl should be in the MCU. I think Peter Parker's daughter, May Parker, with Mary Jane, whether she's black or Korean or whatever you want MJ to be, it doesn't matter. I want their daughter to be the next Spider-Person in 10, 15 years, whatever time scale they want to tell these movies on. And I think not only that, I think time should be allowed to pass. Characters should be allowed to die. Whether it be Captain America or Iron Man, who dies in this next Avengers movie, who does a heroic sacrifice, like, whatever. But I want there to be serious consequences, and I think Spider-Girl deals with serious consequences. Peter and Goblin, or Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, fight this crazy fight to the death. You know, of course, Spider-Man doesn't kill people, so it's unintentional on his part. And he has an opportunity to continue being Spider-Man afterwards. And I won't go into it because I'm going to talk about it in the Volume 2 Spider-Girl review. But he chooses not to. And then 15 years later, or maybe 13 years later, because May could have been like 3 at the time that he got injured, she becomes Spider-Girl. And she doesn't know all this history, and it makes the world more interesting. I think if in 30, 40, 50 years they're still making superhero movies, but they're not rehashing and rebooting and, well, we're going to tell another Batman, or we're going to tell another Hulk, we're going to tell another Spider-Man with just it being Peter Parker, that'll be so awful. And here's the thing, I don't think it needs to go that way. I think today, in the age of digital media, which I'm sure will continue for a long, long time, people want to be able to archive dive, and if they find, if a kid in 20 years is watching a Spider-Girl movie, they're going to want to be able to go back to, I would think, older movies and see the Spider-Man movie where the Peter Parker who is May Parker's dad is there. And I think it would be good. I think the stories that are being told now will benefit from the richness of the world being, I don't know, it'll feel more real, it'll feel more true. It will be popcorn fun at the movies that you can enjoy, but it'll also be a really neat thing going forward in the future, and I think it'll make the companies stronger. And I don't necessarily need to champion Marvel Studios. That's not my point. I don't care about these big companies. I don't care for their vitality necessarily. I enjoy the media, the things that I really enjoy, I make sure to support. I'm not a huge comic reader. I don't buy every toy or action figure just because I don't have the money, but too because amassing a collection of material things isn't how I want to live my life. So just enjoying things as they are, enjoying the media with my family, that's what I get more joy out of. And I've gotten a lot of joy out of reading these Spider-Girl comics with my daughters. And I took the eldest to go see Spider-Man Homecoming with me, and we also enjoyed that. We talked about it beforehand, we watched the movie, we talked about it afterwards, we had a good time. And then actually she and her sister have been talking all about Spider-Man, and we've been looking up the old Spider-Man cartoon from the 60s on YouTube, and even we watched the 1970s Spider-Man live action, which is a trip. Not the Japanese one, just the American one, although I know the Japanese one is interesting too. But these characters are fun, they're enjoyable. We as a family can enjoy them, even though the effects are dated and some of the things in it are silly. We still enjoy the concept of it. And I think, especially because of the way media works in today's world, it's important to establish things or build things that will last, or that are intended to last and not just be thrown away. I don't know the full history of comic books. As I understand it, back a long time ago when comic books first started, they were made out of recycled paper, and they were expected to be thrown away because or not even recycled paper, just low quality paper, and it was expected that you would just throw them away because what's it worth? It's just entertainment that you can spend a couple cents on at the liquor store and get a pop with that and enjoy that for a little while, and then you get rid of it, whatever. But and I just kind of bemoaned materialism and holding on to things, and now I'm gonna advocate holding on to stories. And I think that's different. I think ideas and stories are more important than things. Yes, ideas and stories and concepts, ideas are way more important than physical, tangible things, because they shape people. Yes, the food that you take in, the material surroundings that you have, your housing, your clothing, whatever, those things do have some effect on you. But what has a deeper, longer lasting, more meaningful effect is ideas and stories, media, basically, in short. And I think it would be healthy, it would be nice if it turns out that, Kevin Feige, for example, at Marvel, like, if he is trying to build not only movies that can build to the next, to the next, to the next, to these big events to make huge amounts of money in the box office, but if maybe there's a little bit of a motivated self-interest on his part and on Marvel's part to set up the world of these movies so that there can be a next generation. It'd be super neat. Like, I've talked about that kid in 20 years watching Spider-Girl and then going back and watching, Spider-Man. It'd be really cool if in 20 years, too, there could be, another Netflix show about Dark Devil, or any number of the characters that come from the MC2, or the M2 universe. Sorry, yeah. Like the Fantastic Five with Reed Richards' brain and a robot. Like, I really think these sorts of things should be able... Like, I think it's fair to expect those things to happen in movies in, 20, 30 years, whatever. But at the same time, I feel kind of dubious about the possibilities of that, because I feel as if people will just want to keep going back and rehashing the same things over and over again in the telling of stories. And here's the funny part. You can rehash the beginnings, the origins of stories, and cast new heroes in molds that are very similar to the original heroes, while they are a different person who can have different experiences that inform them to be distinct from the original. And that's okay. Spider-Girl very much begins like Spider-Man in a lot of ways. Of course, there are differences, but it feels spiritually like a successor. And it's funny, because out of all these different Spider-Man movies, none of them have had the exact comic book origin. These, the Raimi Maguire, the Anderson Cooper is a news guy, not the Andrew Garfield. The Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans, and now this Tom Holland Sony Marvel Spider-Man. Like, they've all had different origins, and they aren't, very similar to the original origin in the comics. I know once in the 2000s with the New Chapter, I think that's what it was called, I believe Quesada oversaw like the shift in Spider-Man's origin, and like Doc Ock's technology that fused the arms, the octopus arms, to his spine, was the same thing that like irradiated the spider or whatever that bit Peter, that gave him his powers. So like that's different. But I'm saying, even like there have been different origins for Spider-Man going on. They've been adjusted and tweaked, but like I don't think any of the films have fully reflected that. And like that's okay. What I'm saying is it's okay for things not to be exactly the same. I'm not one of these people who believes you have to be a slave to the source material of anything. But it would be nice if we went further, if creators went further and said, well, I don't have to be a slave to the origin, and I also don't have to rehash this again and make the 10th Peter Parker be Spider-Man again and show his origin again. And that's why Spider-Girl, or the really Marvel Comics 2, the M2 universe model for the movies is what I'm hoping can happen for the movies. I'd like us to be able to move forward in history in the movies, and for them to be able to look back. I mean, one of the coolest features about Ant-Man was that there had been an Ant-Man in the past, and there had even been an Ant-Woman, or Wasp, or whatever they called her, in the past. And the first Ant-Man movie sets up that this new guy's going to be the Ant-Man. And then we get to see advancements happen with him in Civil War, and he's, Giant Man, if that is in fact what they still call him. And then, like, if there's an Ant-Man 2, I think it's very likely that Pym's daughter will be the Wasp, or whatever they're going to call her. And, that's fun. That's enjoyable. Seeing the same things rehashed over and over and over again, the same stories told ad nauseum, I don't think is engaging or exciting. I think people turn off to that. And, here's a great example. The Fast and the Furious movies. I've only seen, I think, the first 3. Maybe I saw 4, because I think I saw one with The Rock in it, and The Rock wasn't in it until the 4th one. Those keep moving this story forward. It's a silly story, I think. I haven't been able to keep up with it because my interest outgrew the Fast and the Furious movies. But, but anyway, like those stories, that world has kept moving forward, and I'm really hopeful that that's what we're going to get out of the Marvel Comics universe, and that's what we're going to get, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I'm hoping that that's what we'll get out of DC, even though I don't really watch DC movies because I'm not really... Anyway, the third Batman, Dark Knight Rises, was, I think, terrible, and the tone, the heavy darkness in all the other Batman, or all the other DC movies after that is totally unattractive to me, so I haven't bothered checking them out, and I'm not saying they're bad movies, I'm just saying they don't appeal to me. But anyway, I've talked for long enough. I think I got my point across. I was originally going to title this Marvel, or the MCU needs Spider-Girl, or something like that, but I'm not sure that's an appropriate title now. I think I'm going to have to adjust it to reflect what I was really getting at, which is that in order for comic book movies to survive, they have to keep moving not only the characters, but the world in which the characters exist forward. I don't know how to encapsulate that in a title, but I'll work on it. Anyway, thank you for listening. Until next time.